So how do you get a link? So you can't generate a link from here.
Hello everyone, welcome to the finals of Hogwarts Round Robin 2022. Congratulations to all the breaking team and judges. So in opening opposition we have opening government, we have Franco and Pearl. In opening opposition, we have Frank Bannerman once again with a different partner hoping to rewrite history, venture. In closing government, we have Andrew Steku and Macharia. And in closing opposition, we have Prosper, Michael, and then Elisha. With me on the panel, we have Master Fua, we have Benjamin Donko, we have Difianu Afi, we have Esther Baker, we have Kezia Ochamponsa, and Solomon Omane Mensa on the panel too. I'm Kojo Champon and I'm going to be the chair for this round. The motion for the round is this house supports the existence of evils like Lord Voldemort. We hope to have a very good round. Thank you very much for being here. We shall now have the Prime Minister open up the final for us. Yeah.
Now the lights need to be like directly, like, because I just find it a little bit distracting. Okay. So.
Wait, hold on, please. Is it on the page? Keep it asking.
Okay, we have Rabba.
Panels. Both sides of the house have to defend some form of evil. We think that in status quo, particularly the motion says that this house supports evil like Lord Voldemort. So on the opposition side, you still cannot run away from defending a particular kind of evil. But then the first thing that you need to realize in today's motion, or the first argumentation you get from Prime Minister, is the banality of evil. We think that people who are evil always have nuances or circumstances. So clearly, as the info slide states, Lord Voldemort came from a background where he was not privileged, his mom was not a wizard, and then in the world of Hogwarts, the privileged people are the pure blood, and then the people who had full parents being Hogwarts and then 80s, which means like people like Harry Potter were privileged people, and then were privileged people in that particular society. We think that this means that circumstances always create or causes people to be evil, which means that these people inherently are not evil people, but then the circumstances require them to be evil. So for example, if if I'm coming from a poor background, if I'm coming from a minority background, which means that I have less alternatives in the world, means that I'm more leaning to enter, or I'm most likely to enter vices or social vices as a way to be able to box myself or bring myself out of this particular bubble that I find myself in. It doesn't mean that inherently I am an evil person. All it means is that the circumstances provided to me mean that I need to stick with these things. We think that basically when we focus on the fact that circumstances create evil, and that if you focus on the fact that people are inherently evil, we think that it creates distrust amongst human beings. One, this looks like people having ideas like black people are bad. No matter what happens, no matter whatever happens, black people are bad, which means that they fail to recognize the context or years of slavery and then black people and then our environment and things that we've been into. We think that when we're able to take or consider the circumstances, minority groups in of themselves are able to be able to come out of this thing. So that's the first impact you get from open government accountability. We think that in a world where this kind of evil exists, i.e., where we think that the circumstances are what create or causes these people to be evil, it means that we are able to have conversations. Elisha said that. We are able to have conversations and then interrogate where these ideas or these particular behaviors are coming from. On the flip side, it means that accountability metrics for government to be able to better the fact is that to be able to better social systems are not there. It means that entrenched groups who are suffering from systemic oppression are still going to be able to exist, because you need to realize the kind of revolution that after Lord Voldemort, the kind of revolution that is bad, which I will get into. So, Hannah, what you need to realize is that we think that in our world we are able to better get or better access accountability because we are able to create or analyze these causes or be able to understand that these things cause these things and individuals to act this way. On the flip side, what happens is that people are believed to be inherently bad, and then when they're inherently bad, they do not think, or governments do not feel like they are accountable for these things. It means that the agency and then the incentive to solve societal injustices and societal oppression does not exist. In our world where we identify that these are the circumstances that we beg this result, it means that we are able to solve these things. The comparative, but then before that,
so don't you think if we say that it's just fine for someone to be evil because of where they come from, that gives them a legitimacy like for them to escape accountability?
You see, panel, that basically does not make sense because we know that Voldemort did not escape accountability. Voldemort was still punished in that particular debate. The thing is that, or the core of this debate is to prevent more Voldemorts from coming up. So Voldemort was already punished in this debate. We do not think that simply because, and then in fact, if you solve these circumstances that we are talking about, you take away that incentive from them. It means that they do not have any incentive to now rely on to say that because of this, that is why I'm evil. That's why we think that we need to rip them off that incentive that exists so that we cannot, or they cannot have ways to escape their evil. But then what is the comparative? On the comparative, right? So, panel, we think that after we're able to create awareness to these issues and then be able to create the discourse that solves it, on their role, the comparative is that if minority groups are not the ones who are practicing the evil, it comes from the rich people with the power and then the monopoly or the access to be able to monopolize this kind of evil. We think that is inherently problematic because when it comes to poor people having poor people becoming evil, we are able to access the circumstances that and be able to solve this. On the flip side, it's very difficult to be able to pander or be able to rip this evil from these rich people because of one, the kind of power that they hold in status quo. So, for example, anybody who has watched Harry Potter will concede that there were some times when he did some things which, there was some times where he did some things where he was supposed to be expelled or etc. But then because of the kind of privilege that he had, i.e., the privilege here, in context of this debate panel, realize that the privilege here, or the privilege in Harry Potter or Hogwarts, refers to somebody who had a pure blood. That is why people like Voldemort's mother were maltreated in that particular school and were treated like second-class citizens because they felt like they didn't belong. We think that the environment of that privilegedness at Hogwarts, that's what made Lord Voldemort had so much disdain for his origin, because he felt like at a point in time it was his origin that has prevented him from fitting in with this type of crowd and be able to create or be the kind of person that he wants to be. This is because at the end of the day, it just continues to go ahead to show that rich people are the one with all the power. Now, back to my comparative. So we think that on the comparative, it is worse for rich people to be able to have this monopoly because, one, they have the money to be able to propagate these things. Two, the structures to be able to call them out to rectify these things on the comparative are more difficult because we're able to poor, governments even pander to them, which we think that makes it very difficult to break that cycle of evil. So we think that in our world, which side is able to? Thank you. So we think that in our world, the debate of this particular evil is principally justified because of the kind of utility that we're able to get or be able to get from it. It means that things is out of order. We're able to get like things better utility from these things at the end of the day. We think that at the end of the day, it means that when these people come into power, there's more incentives to be able to break that particular barrier or break that particular bubble. They should be able to show us on the comparative how their world of evil is able to create the kind of utility that we have. Because in our utility, we are able to revolutionize like Lord Voldemort. It means that we are able to correct societal systems for societal growth to be able to happen. I.e., the best utility that you can get from debate. This is why we went from OG. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that program. The house are now inviting the leader of the opposition to open up the opposition bench to be clear.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, panel, on my side of the house, we definitely do not support the existence of evils like Lord Voldemort, right? Why is this so? Let's start from the basics, right? Because we think that there's always this natural way of individuals to really want to gravitate away from pain, naturally. So that's why even in existence or right now in our society, we have people or societies creating structures to help alleviate or aid pain. That's why we have hospitals. That's why we have structures always exist to ensure that they limit pain to the breast minimum at all points in time. So why? Because at every point in time, they see that inherently there is good in doing good, right? So this means that these structures themselves exist to protect individuals from from evil. What this means is that it is irrational for us to now endorse something that society or the structure in of itself is running away from. So what is the impact of this? It means that we'll be able to show you that even this evil, the structures of society in of itself run away from it. How much more the kind of evil that is really equivalent to that of Lord Voldemort, that's the equivalent to that of Hitler, that's the equivalent to all those kind of evil people. You realize that it's one that necessarily don't think we want to buy into. So why is this problematic? Why? Because we think what you do is that you now approve the kind of killings that happened during the times of Hitler. Why? Because to see that you support the existence of such evils, you inherently support the oppression, the killing of Nazis, all those particular that were perpetuated by those particular individuals, because now that particular kind of evil is one that in your world you say is right? So it means that the evils that were stated by those historical killings, etc., religious, whatever, all those things were one that you are going to say is justified, right? And that is one that we think is naturally bad, is one that we think we don't want to buy into, right? But why again do we think this is very problematic, right? Where does evil come from? Relax for a minute. Where does evil come from? We think inherently individuals have a high tendency of selfishness. They always want to place their individual personal pleasure above any other thing. So what you do in the side of government, what you do or what you get best in our world is that we create barriers, or what you do in that world, that you break down the barriers that exist to prevent people from wanting to actually break or move or tag along to that particular kind of inherent evil that they have as humans. In that world, we try to create or maintain those barriers so people don't want to gravitate towards that inherent evil that exists in them. You break that down, and all the harms and impacts that they say exist in their world is one that's necessarily going to happen in their world, and we think that that is what is more problematic, right? But before I go on, maybe just even engage some of the things opening up and say what we don't think is problematic, right? So the whole argumentation about the banality of evil and how society pushes people to create harm, right? We think this is very problematic, right? Because first thing, we think that we can be able to interrogate the wrongs without necessarily justifying the harm. So we agree that the perpetrator of the crime was a minority, right? But we don't have to justify the crime that he did before we are able to interrogate it, right? And even if we want to put this in context, the kind of example, like if you want to relate it as to Voldemort and Harry Potter, recognize that they all were half black, they all came from the same poor society, and they all came from the same half human, half which means that same scenario existed, but that didn't push Harry Potter to exist in the same to perpetrate those particular kind of harms. What you do then is that you are not creating, or are you creating a way for those people to escape accountability. That is why Bannerman's period is very important, right? But the next thing on accountability, what do they say? They say, oh, then it means that they're necessarily not able to create better structures because there's some sort of privilege for those people to exist, right? We don't see how that is existent because first thing, we don't think that even Harry Potter in the first place was privileged in the first instance because he was just like Voldemort, but that didn't push him to go to the extreme, right? We don't think that is something that should run. Next thing, right? Next thing, why do we think that is very important, right? To recognize that it's very important for people to prioritize and take pride in where they come from or their identity. Why is this very important? Because what we see in today's motion is that we recognize that when people take pride in where they come from, they are more likely to push for laws that are decentralized to help better the people they come from. But right now, but with individuals such as Voldemort who detest where they come from, what you see them doing is that they are always looking for ways to move away from where they come from without particularly creating that change. So what does this look like? It looks like creating a certain perfect world where they can exist to devoid themselves of their upbringing because they don't have value or pride in where they come from. So this looks like Voldemort trying to create a perfect race or a perfect race for himself, devoid of some supernatural race where he himself can exude that perspective of power. Right? Why this is that? What this means is that you go to the extreme to kill people or do even much worse to exist to attain that kind of what you call it, that kind of perfect world. But most importantly, what you do is that you don't even help or better the places where you came from, right? So we think those things are inherently very problematic, and we don't think we want to buy into that in our world, right? But recognize this, we agree that there's always going to be some certain level of base evil that exists, right? And that is one that we need to know, and that's why we agree to that because we need to be able to have that for accountability and have the balance to exist. But what this motion is asking us to speak about is that we need to support the kind of evil which amongst that of Voldemort, and that exceedingly above the baseline, and that is what these guys magnetically necessarily support. Closing.
So, if your world has some form of evil, don't all the harms you're talking about also happen in your world?
No, it doesn't happen in our world, so you can come and justify why that happens in our world anyway. So, moving on, right? So, what have we been able to show you, right? We've shown you that at all points in time, right, humans need to be able to so human interactions need to be prioritized, right? Because listen, at all points in time, if you want to engage in harm, even though the harm might give you some sort of, let's say, instantaneous benefit, the impact that happens in the end is one that still comes back to bite you. That is why in the end, irrespective of all that Lord Voldemort did and all the bad things that did, the impact still affected him, right? So we think on no days do we necessarily push for a word that necessarily says that will exist. But secondly, what you do is that you reverse or engineer society and to go against the natural inhibition to do evil. Because when you support this kind of evil, the individuals at all points that want to push or approximate towards that kind of thing. Because you recognize that when you say you support, it means that you are creating that kind of ideology that sees that particular thing is good. And recognize that the problem here is that these individuals or these bad people usually have a large cost of personality. What does it mean? It means that you create a platform for these people to incorporate more people into their cause. And why that is bad? It means that you tilt the balance in the world where now more people will be more pushed to like approximating towards evil than good in the world, and we think that in all of us is going to break the balance, and it's one that we necessarily think we are not going to buy into. So we are prioritizing this debate, which shows you one, what's going to better the world. We still have the balance we need, but in the end, all the harms they exist don't exist in our world. Like the better Western in our world, very proud.
Thank you very much for that speech. Shall we now have the Deputy Prime Minister to advance the case for opening cabinet?
Alright, starting now. What opposition wants you to believe is that there is no social order once you hold individuals accountable. The silver bullet is this: the rich or privileged are never held accountable in this type of system. That means that the system is broken. Marginalized people are never recognized as marginalized, and they are still punished for the things they have no agency over. What's the comparative in today's debate from Padede's speech? In today's debate, there's a simple comparative that she's already established. What we are to support is evil like that of Lord Voldemort. What that means is that we are supporting some sort of evil, but that's like Lord Voldemort, which has been characterized. What that means is that the burden on these guys is to support some sort of evil, but unlike Lord Voldemort. What the comparative then again is evil that has people finding themselves in situations or circumstances they have no control over, i.e. Lord Voldemort coming from a poor home, a less privileged home, which has less recognition in Hogwarts, i.e. having his mother being treated as an average citizen and brutalized and abused. Then the comparative on their side is that they are to defend that sort of evil where people are born into privileged families but still choose to do those kind of things, right? But then, on leaving Harry Potter, we think that Hogwarts created a niche around him and gave him the recognition because he was pure-blooded. If he did not even have, his family did not even have wealth and wealth, they had value and recognition because of that family they came out from. Why then do we support the kind of system, the kind of evils like Lord Voldemort? But before that, clarity. We do not concede and support the harms that come out of these evils. No. We support that evil because we think that that's the kind of system that can better create and stop the recycling of evil. What is the cycle and what's the system that continuously causes an entrenched stance of evil? Relax. This is it. Human beings are born by virtue of birth into certain situations they do not want to consent to. I.e. Boko Haram, ISIS, inequality that they fight for and all that. We think that these individuals continuously push for revolutions and provide better accountability checks for systems. Why? Because they feel that their marginalization, there is a problem in governance and systems that causes them to do the kind of things they do not want to do. We think that what that does is that they have a better stance and justified stance to fight against systems. What this does on impact is not the harms they so-called talk about. It's the better checking and accountability metric in our world. In their world, what's the comparative? They have an evil which is not stemmed out of lottery of birth or evil that's not stemmed out of being from a poor family. Evil that people have personally chosen to be in. What that means for these rich guys is that they are less likely to be accountable for governance because they are the same people who are in bed with government and fund these kind of things. So for these people, they do not appear as inherently evil, but they are. The ones that are continuously marginalized are the ones who have no agency of the kind of evil they create around themselves. We think that if you want accountability check, it's in our world because these people give you the reasons why they found themselves in those situations and governments have to be responsible. But if you want solvency of crimes and evil like BLMs and all that, these guys, it puts government in a better position to check for these solutions and solve them. In their world, these guys pose as just people who want to create natures for themselves whatsoever. They don't give you the exposure for the accountability for you to know what the problem is. They don't give you revolutionize against governments because they are ones necessarily funding these governments closely.
It's really absurd when you say that you don't support the hound. Because the hound is the tipping point that causes the accountability. Because I know that you will come after me, I wouldn't want to hurt you. So how do you defend this debate without defending the hound?
Like this one I'm trying to say, right? Maybe the wording was wrong, but listen to the analysis, like that, listen. What I'm trying to say is that we do not support that Lord Voldemort should continuously kill people. Like, it should be in the killing aspect of people. What we support is that what that killing impacts on governments. The accountability checks that. Okay, so maybe yes. Look, assume that as support. That's fine. I don't know what the word is. Listen to the analysis and like stop playing around the tagging. What we support is that the existence of such evil is an accountability check on government. Engage that. In your world, the comparative is that you don't have these things because they are tied around the state and the government and they are the ones in bed with them. But listen, in your world, you create a cycle of discrimination because of the distrust in groups. So BLMs, Black Lives, are continuously distrusted by New York City's citizens or by US citizens, right? The reason why you have continuous white supremacy is because of the continuous distrust in Black lives who found themselves in situations they did not get for themselves. That is the continuous reason why we have discriminations, because of that distrust that existed. We think that these people did not necessarily have agency over the situations that they found themselves. In our world, when there's existence of these people, it means that you can have an interrogation and discourse of what caused their situation. In your world where you support evil, that's not likened to Lord Voldemort, who came out from who came out of a poor family regardless, but one that came out of a better family. It means that what you support is a system where you do not ever find the causes of evil, and you do not ever break the cycle of discrimination. The comparative is pretty simple, and the debate ends at opening government. Why? Because this is it. The comparative is that we support evil that is likened to people who find themselves in situations they never wanted to, right? But are ready to change and then are ready to cause revolutions and accountability check. In the absence of that in their world, it means that you continuously have these same people infiltrating governance. You cannot segregate between which people cause the problem and which people continuously discriminate. In our world, we give voices for minorities to be able to channel their grievances. Because even if black people are radical in the United States of America, we think that is the reason to signal that people are being abused and killed. And that's the reason why they continuously do that. We think that the cycle of discrimination ends in our world when we support such a system for them to be recognized. In their world, they continuously have that discrimination because they do not necessarily give recognition for these people and do not allow the discourse to exist. What they need to defend is some sort of evil that is devoid of the one they are defending. The sort of evil they are defending is a privileged sort of evil where inherently people have chosen to do those things. How does that provide accountability to governance, and how do you get a breakdown of the discrimination that exists in your world? Proud government.
Alright. So I want to dedicate my speech to Isaiah, who I made the finals with last year. And I want to dedicate my speech to Bencho, who decided to be my partner when I was stranded without a partner, for carrying me to a final. And say hello. Alright, can I start? I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, this is why opening governments cannot win this debate. Because their problem is that we need checking mechanisms on the government, and we need to interrogate where people come from so that we can be able to fix the problems. The question then becomes, is it possible for us to interrogate why those people committed those crimes without buying into the kind of evil that Voldemort is? That is the simple question. If we can do it, then there's no reason why we should buy into the evil that is Voldemort. Because if you buy into their world, it means that we are going to have a high threshold of evil. And this is what Voldemort's evil looks like. Killing people, torturing people to the point of madness, making people orphans, right? That's the kind of evil we are talking about. It means in their world, they say, for us to be able to check the government, for us to be able to question like where people come from when they commit crimes, let us allow that kind of death and torturing and all those things to happen. Do you get it? It doesn't make sense for us to have such a high threshold for us to hold people accountable when there are other forms of accountability mechanisms. Like what? Number one, it looks like things like discourse that exists in society. It looks like things like media conversations. It looks like things like laws. It looks like things like social justice movements that are able to come up and call out against the government. Now notice, even in status quo, when someone kills, right? In status quo, in the law court, right? You don't just say, oh, you killed, so you are going to prison. Circumstantial evidence, like the circumstances under which someone commits a crime, is sometimes considered in punishing that person. So the person might get a lighter sentence for that crime, but that doesn't mean that the state supports or condones that action. It just means the state understands that action. And notice the difference. I'm not taking out. Sit down. I'm not taking out. The difference on their side is that they are supporting the action. The condoning of evil is something that we do not buy into. There's a very clear reason why these people can never put us in this debate. But then let's go on, like show you more why they do it. So the first thing they say is that, first of all, the counterfactual they give us is really ridiculous, right? We can't defend rich evil. Like, we hate evil on both sides. Evil is evil. The only thing is that on our side, there will be some form of base evil. On their side, they support some specific kind of evil. That evil that can be torturing people, like torturing them to the point of madness, killing them, like, and that's the kind of thing they're supposed to defend. It's less kind of evil. We're not supposed to support rich evil of going. That's a very ridiculous behavior. Then why they have to do it? They say, like banality of evil, circumstances not prone to be evil. Pano, first response to this. Harry Potter was a half-blood, if you know, and I don't want this to happen to me again. Harry Potter was a half-blood, for saying, like, Harry Potter literally came from the same background as Voldemort. They were literally the same person. They were both orphans, they were both half-bloods. The question in the Delta became the choices they made at critical points in time. Because when, like, Harry Potter got the sorting hat, you could have chosen to go to Slytherin, right? But he chose not to, he chose Gryffindor. Like, at every point in time, and this is not about the book, it's about society. People always have choices at every point in time, no matter how poor or broke they are. What that means is that, and why do you know this to be true? This is why there are a lot of people who come from the same circumstances and are all broke, but not all of them are thieves, right? Everybody came, like a lot of people come from the same circumstances, and not all of them are thieves. What that means is that it invalidates the principle that says that if you come from somewhere poor, it means you have to do evil things to survive. That principle is out of this debate. Then they say, this people didn't have control over their choices and all those things. Then keep quiet. You mean like I have a lot to say. That thing doesn't really fly, right? And so there are several accountability mechanisms. I have a lot of extensions in this debate. First thing, why we don't support evils like Voldemort? As just already analyzed, people need to have pride in identity and the origin from which they came from. Why is this important? Because if you have pride in where you came from, it means that if you are able to break the glass ceiling, you have an incentive to come back and give back to your community. Voldemort hated himself and where he came from. And this is why when he got to the power that he got to, he didn't really want to help anybody that was half-blood. He rather wanted to kill them. We need people to understand that even though you come from a poor background, you can break the glass ceiling and create policies that trickles down. What's the impact? It means people are more likely going to create decentralized development policies that trickle down to poor communities and minority groups. Who best protects those guys opening opposition? Second thing, they won't harm minorities more. Why? Because one, they justify the oppression that all of the people who face those things went through. So it means that, like, and this is it. They are saying that it is the support that Hitler was able to kill millions of Jews. Why? Because they want good to be able to exist, or they want people to know that there is some form of good in the world, or accountability mechanisms, right? Within the moment to justify that form of evil, it means that you justify the elimination of various identity groups. We think that's a bad thing. But then second, you create cults of personalities around such evil people to continue to do those harms. Notice, people like Hitler already have cults of personalities and already have people that buy into them. When you now give Hitler a legitimacy for the action he does, what you do is that you give Hitler an extra mechanism to co-opt more people to join him to do more of that evil, right? They need to defend why you need to give someone as evil as that more reason to cause harm. But the third thing is that in your world, you say that people like mulattoes in the USA who didn't know know where they fit into the world, because Harry Potter and Voldemort can be like mulattoes because they are half and half. So mulattoes didn't know where to fit in the world. You create some form of identity dystopia in their minds, because what they say is that we don't fit in here, so let's be evil and kill everyone and do whatever we want to do. We think that's an evil thing to do because you create identity dystopia that harms the people who are the most marginalized. The third extension, where evil comes from, that's something starts on. I'll explain on that.
Yes, so you think there is any value in having a Hitler in history?
Yes, I'll prove that to you. We don't think, we think evil is important, but the kind of Hitler, the kind of evil Hitler like personifies is a very bad thing. Why? And I'll go straight to that. The threshold of evil is too high for the little good that you get. The principal assumption on their side is, if you have very high evil, you should have very high good. This is why even though Hitler existed, we didn't have high good. Because even though the USA and all those Western countries came together and held us and kumbaya and fought against Hitler, in the USA, there was active oppression against black people. There was still the elimination of indigenous people. There were still people who were being killed within those communities. What that means is that high evil doesn't equate high good. It means that the threshold for achieving evil is too high a burden for us to accept, to be able to get marginal good. This is a very important principle that should be talked about in deliberation, because that is their case. Now I've already shown you why we take that out. But the next thing is that we think you erode the ability for people to be able to do good. Why? Because the reason why people continue to do evil is because they are selfish, they want to have things like pleasure at the expense of other people, right? What happens is that society creates socialization tools, like tells them that being good is actually a good thing. Don't be evil and all those things through religion. When you say it is legitimate for people like Islam to exist, you erode and reverse engineer all the forms of socialization that society has created. Because people already want to be evil in the first place. You give them more reason to be evil and think that in itself is a bad thing for society to emulate. At the end of today's debate, you need to look at this. Are we able to get some form of good without having the high threshold of the specific evil that Voldemort impersonates? Only open opposition proves to you. They can get all forms of accountability on our side, and what you do in terms of several levels, you cause extreme harm, and that's an unjustified thing to do in society. Proud to do.
Shout out to the cool kids.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. It was because of the Rwanda genocide that the principle of sovereignty was broken down. Without the Rwanda genocide, this principle of sovereignty would have never been broken down, because it took 1 million people to die and nobody to do anything about it. That people said this thing is wrong. It is because of World War I we created the United Nations. It is extreme evil that necessitates the solution to the problem. What they fail to contextualize is that in their world they have evil. It just exists at a more minute level. People in this Hogwarts were against muggles. But it took Voldemort, the most extreme form, the person who wanted to completely eliminate them, to create the collective action we need for us to be able to solve the problem. Our case is not to tell you that high evil equals high good. It's to tell you that the existence of high evil is why we want to avoid high evil. Thus we create solutions to create that problem, not that we enjoy the good times more. 3 points of context we start with. There's a spectrum of evil. They have to defend that the evil in their world will still exist. People will still be harmed. It's not like evil doesn't exist in their world. It just exists more silently, and it doesn't have the extreme form that creates a collective action for us to be able to solve them. So for every Voldemort, they would have the Dracos, the snakes, and all these people who are against muggles that would still exist in their world. Without Hitler, they would still have the Mussolinis, the Saddam Husseins, and all those people in their world. They cannot
that they live in heaven where there are no bad people. They have to defend those microaggressions existing in their side. Therefore, we tell you that the existence of these people like Hitler and people like such as Voldemort is the reason why we kill people like Snape, Hussein, Mussolini. That's how we prevent people like them ever coming up ever again. Second point of context. This constitution, and it is evil that creates the deterrent. The reason why your constitution says there can be a term limit of 2 terms is because somebody said 30 years a long time ago. It is through these things that people are able to create the solutions that we need. Third, we don't need to support, and unlike OG, we are going to actually support the harms that happen in that situation, and we're going to tell you why those harms are the necessity that we need for us to be able to solve the problem. 3, for us to be able to mitigate even their harms before they come. What is extreme evil? It has 3 points of context that you must understand. 1, it is very spaced out. It is not regular. It doesn't happen every other time. It probably happens once in a generation. The last generation probably saw a world war twice. Never happened again until today. It's been 50 years because we created systems to prevent that. Things like slavery, they don't happen again because we created systems to do this. So while they do come up, they don't come up regularly, meaning the impact is not as harmful as they look. 2, usually followed by a reaction by people. We don't have these things happening all the time. Usually people follow the reaction. 3, we have an incentive to avoid this because if we have a pain or we are self-preserving, we usually as a result of this don't want this to happen again. This is why we are able to solve this. What is our distinction? We will defend the harm. 2, we will bite the bullet and show you why we believe the existence of these people is good, and we will show the impact beyond kumbaya reflections. We will actually show you how the solution comes about. Let's now go into the solution. How are we able to get the solution? We fix problems because we care about them. Our distinction from OO is that we don't just talk about it, we actually have to do something about it, not just awareness. It's about systems to prevent this thing from happening again, not accountability. We create an entire change in the way the system is run, not holding each other accountable, but putting people, creating deterrents, creating systems to be able to check this, and I'll explain how. It is through the worst forms of evil that we find solutions to problems. Through World War I and violence, we got several changes. United Nations was created. We check now nationalistic rhetoric because we know the existence of the extreme version of nationalistic rhetoric means that we cannot allow it to happen again. So whenever anyone is nationalist, we almost want to check that so that doesn't happen again. We have international culpability, court of justice, criminal courts. Those are the reasons these things exist. The principle of sovereignty was broken because of things like the Rwanda genocide, where people died and no one did anything. Now states can send militaries like Kenya did to Somalia despite internal checks. Why that exists is because extreme evil creates collective action. What are the mechanisms for collective action? Because these solutions would not happen in their world when we only have small but sporadic evil. People kill each other because people are killing each other for so long. It took 1 million people for us to say, okay, enough is enough. Why? And what are the checks for this? 4 reasons. 1, mobilization and the power it has to create a visceral effect to create a collective action problem. This is a mechanism not there. Because once you know that this is the extreme form of it, you're able to create collective action of people. 2, the impact it has on people's lives, knowing that it could affect you. People always thought war exists in other places, but when we had a world war, people knew my son could die, my wife could die, my child could die. That collective action is then created. 3, relatability to these things. When we see people in Ukraine and children are dying and knowing that bombs can fly, it creates better relatability with this problem. And of course the idea that these institutions then have greater coercion power, because most of the time these institutions are lack the nails or the teeth to be able to step into the situation because nobody really cares about it. But now institutions can say, the reason why we give men the death penalty is because we've seen things like femicide, extreme forms of rape. Because of things like racism, you can be able to say racism or any form of discrimination on race is bad. These extreme forms then give institutions the ability to check and to be able to control the sort of things, and they have now the right to react. Those are 4 mechanisms, because the distinction for OG here is that they don't actually recognize how the change happens. I've given you 4 reasons how that change or the incentive for that change is going to happen. Next, the comparative on their best case. In their best case, where you have maybe what is it called? Maybe the al-Bashirs here and there. Maybe you have that Gambian president who was a dictator. Just a few bad people, like they say, the Snapes, all those people. Why don't they get the change? Because Bannerman said we must show how they can get the change. 3 reasons. There's no value attached to loss because people don't feel the direct impact. When war is happening somewhere in Yugoslavia, Americans don't feel it. But when Pearl Harbor is bombed, then you feel it and you want to actually act in that situation. That is how you're able to create the collective action. 2, they have low attention to these problems because they happen in different parts. Saddam Hussein, nobody cared about him until somebody bombed their twin tower somewhere. That's how you're able to get this. 3, there is low buying due to low mobilization due to no direct harm. And of course the harm is low, so the necessity to solve it is low. The necessity to solve on our side is greater. So then
probably take, I don't know, years, hundreds of years before people actually realize this. These changes that happen on our side happen once and it changes everything completely. I've already justified that. What are the trade-offs for this harm? Because we have harms, and like OG, we actually defend this harm. What is the trade-off? Firstly, they're short-term. Because these problems, as you said, we create systems to prevent them from happening again. Even if they happen again, they'll happen very later on, and we'll find solutions to them. Two, the solutions we create tend to have long-term solvency because we have incentives to protect lives and minorities. Two, World War I created checks everywhere. United Nations, globalization, mechanisms for collective security, checking on electric and nationalization. We actually created so many things to prevent it from happening again. So what is the impact of this? We save more people in the long run. In their world, small Hitlers exist and keep killing people for hundreds of years. Fine, ours kills a lot of people. But in the long run, the systems we create check against those expenses and we prevent the long-term suffering of people with maybe one blow. To that extent, we don't have to defend this war or these evils happening all the time. We just have to show that the solutions are only necessitated in our world. They get cheap solutions that rarely ever mobilize people. We actually get the change that's needed. Never be proud.
Thank you very much. So now welcome the member of the committee to introduce the faculty in the conversation. To our lovely participants, observers, please speak for example. We are having a hard time hearing what's going on.
It's too bright.
How for me, boy?
It's too bright to increase the lights.
Work like that. First one.
I'm very sorry, I have no notes.
I'm sorry.
Before I start, this speech is dedicated to my Lord and personal Savior.
Hallelujah, somebody.
This is a tournament for witches and wizards that have to be so, panel, the reason why everybody in today's debate, even our opening, assumes that Lord Voldemort is a revolutionary is because nobody properly contextualizes what we mean when we say evil like Lord Voldemort. I'm going to point out to you what this looks like. This looks primarily like three things. One, self-funded, self-seeking evil. What this means is that the gains are not communal. He is no Robin Hood. What this means is that the instrumentalization of everyone and everything is something that he thinks is okay. This includes individuals within the social grouping. That is why when he set up a cabal, the cabal was made up of pure bloods, not even half bloods like himself. It's something that exists. The second characteristic you should recognize is that his evil is perpetual and unending. If indeed his evil is to achieve a goal, once that goal is achieved, he should quit. But in Lord Voldemort's kind of evil, it does not happen occasionally. It does not stop. It continues and never ends until probably you happen to kill him. Even if you take him to jail, you'll probably institutionalize every single person in jail to become even more evil than they are. The third characteristic that's very important is that he is not just evil. He is the personification of evil. What does this mean? It means that he doesn't do it for any reason. It's just fucking fun to him. He enjoys it. There is bloodlust in his eyes. There is like an enjoyment that he gains from all this. What's the delta of this case? It means that Lord Voldemort didn't do what he did for a revolution. He didn't do what he did to
check the government. He did what he did because at some point, evil and the pursuit of power by a megalomaniac like him was something that was fun and enjoyable. That in of itself takes OG out of this debate because accountability, change, all those things they preach is not something that you get because he's not trying to cause any change. He's trying to be happy from seeing people die. He enjoys it. It's something that he enjoys and does not want to cause any change in that regard, and that's important. With that, we think that points out to you why that's so. But this guy say, like, we think that circumstances is what causes people to do things. Four responses. One, other individuals have been in those same circumstances, but they didn't succumb to those means. Hermione Granger was even worse off than Tom Riddle because she was a mudblood. None of her parents were of wizarding heritage, but she didn't succumb to that. Two, every kind of evil is justified by that logic because I can also say I had an itch in my testicle, and because of that, I felt like killing somebody. It's so stupid. But the third thing is that you equally reaffirm the rhetorics. Almost says that. I'll be fair to credit that to them. But what they didn't tell you about that is that you don't just reaffirm the rhetoric. You draw back whatever progress has been made on that front for your social group. So whatever Hermione Granger does is always going to fall to the shadow of the fact that Lord Voldemort was particularly bad. What does that mean? The delta of this is that Lord Voldemort only worsens the already bad state of these midliners and these minorities in that regard. But why is this particularly important? Because we need to recognize that in the pursuit of good, we should not necessarily particularly become the very evil we stand against. At best, if Lord Voldemort was a revolutionary, if he was pushed to the wall of madness because of every evil that was done to him, we think it is then onus on him to make sure he does not replicate that evil. We think what you do when you say you support evil like him is that you replicate that evil and tell him it is right for you to act upon revenge. What you get then is a cyclical nature of vengeance that is unending, that does not create any level of solvency. But that directs me to these guys in closing because that's the delta of the debate. Because they say that they think you need a grand evil for you to be able to create a grand good. And this is very, very directly clashing with my case. Because we need to recognize that in the very nature of evil, it does not come out of nothingness. It comes with harms. What I mean then is that they say for you to do good, you need to do harms first. Why is that not true? Because they defend you with claims like, oh, you need a personalization of the pain. That's stupid because of this. We think human beings have the ability to forecast evil and perceive the amount of pain that they can feel. That is why many people who know the amount of evil that can happen in the world act before it. What that means then is that upon recognition that something could happen, you don't need it to happen for you to get that level of change. We think individuals of themselves are able to make that deduction and create that level of solvency in that regard. But more importantly, we think in the very nature of things, the evil that comes off of individuals like Lord Voldemort are not evils that stay in one lifetime. They create offshoots of even broader, more perpetuating evil. That is why, because of Hitler, Jews are looked down upon. That is why, because of slavery, you constantly have black people who have structural problems woven into their society. This means that you completely down that society that you say you want to save, because in the long run, it doesn't create any level of solvency in that regard. That's primarily bad. Before I continue opening.
Your claim that people have gone through the same situation but were not bad at it is the more reason why you continuously discriminate and marginalize these people, even though they are not.
No. I look at individuals who constantly face discrimination, but they come out better off in that regard. They do not become evil, they do not have to perpetuate evil. That's why people who have faced the level of oppression like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, instead of carrying a cutlass and cutting everybody's head, every man's head here, they rather give speeches that inspire things. There are multiple methods with which you can get change, and that's what we offer. What Omo says is that, well, we think we shouldn't go to that extent in a bid to get change in that regard. We don't only think it's about the extent. We think that's the very extent that there is no good, because they say that there is a good. We don't think there's any good in evils like Lord Voldemort. That's why we give a characterization that purely paints a picture of him to you. To the extent that there is no good that comes out of it, it is inherently bad, because there is no Robin Hood in individuals like Lord Voldemort. It means that this is primarily a stupid enterprise. But more importantly, we think that the kind of evil we tolerate is evil that has good returns in the long run. Severus Snape being uncompromising
serious black, going to jail, coming out of jail to protect the history and protect the legacy of the Potter family. It's something that we think is good. You go to bad extent and get good returns. They show you no good returns in that regard. We think that it's something that is bad. For you to win this debate, you need to properly accept that the personification of evil, self-funding, self-perpetuating is one that is particularly bad. We do not buy into such a rhetoric. If evil will be there, let's get some good out of it.
Shall we now have the quick of government to conclude the government and authorizing
Not seeing me to be people.
Speak in name, sister.
Okay, I'm going to begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Our extension is summed up in a case Prosper makes. He says the reason why people can still check harm and mitigate it is because people can forecast evil. That's the extension in Macharia's speech, because he says the reason why everybody is aggressively trying to stop Russia-Ukraine is because they have knowledge that Hitler existed once, that spiraled into the extreme versions of that harm, which is the World War II. Which means the knowledge of that existence is what creates the framework for people to utilize that forecast ability of humans to create that deterrent structures that Prosper talks about. Because humans don't think in absentia, they think based on the knowledge that they have and the insights that they have given information that's available to them. And so it's simple. The reason why the world cares so much about Russia, Ukraine, and all states have instituted extreme sanctions to stop Russia and Putin is because they have the knowledge that that scenario can degenerate into extreme evil. And that degeneration is unpredictable, and you can't tell which smaller evil can degenerate into that extreme evil. What it means is that you have an active incentive to intensify efforts to solve every single small evil, because you do not have the capacity to pick and choose which one degenerates into extreme evil. What that means is that there is an active incentive on our side to prevent the perpetuation of smaller evils by mere fact that Hitler happened 50 years ago, and this prevention will continue 1,000 years down the line because of that knowledge of the existence of extreme evil. That's why Macharia says you don't need it to frequently happen to have impact. You just need it to exist for that knowledge to create the change that we want. And so that's the extension. You haven't engaged it. There is zero analysis as to the response to this particular extension. Hold on, I'll take it when I'm ready. On GAF, there is small-scale evil like social crimes. There is medium-scale evil like Saddam Hussein, and there is extreme-scale evil like Hitler. On these guys' side, there is small-scale evil, and there is medium-scale evil. The analysis is to show you why society has an extreme incentive to prevent medium-scale and small-scale evil is because of the existence of the ability of those evils to spiral into extreme evils. Nobody knew Voldemort would become what he is. And so Hogwarts would take care and ensure that people who start showing his early signs would not degenerate into the extremities of Voldemort. And that means you preemptively protect society from the repercussions and the repetitions of these particular things. And that's the debate we have from closing government. How then would we weigh up? Because these guys will tell you that at least when Saddam Hussein exists, when small crimes exist, when Russia, Ukraine exists, there will still be reasonably some sort of effort towards stopping it.
there are 3 reasons why that effort is better on our side. A, because society is scared about the vision and the visualization of that extreme evil, there is extreme intensity in the extent to which they want to mitigate it. And that's why countries have to put unprecedented sanctions in dealing with Ukraine, because they know the consequences or the likely consequences or the probability of it to degenerate into a world war is dire that they cannot think about. But it means that the scale of intensity with which the solution mechanisms put in this is way fast on our side. And that's why Russia and Ukraine can exist on their side. But only Russia and Ukraine and small 3 countries who surround Ukraine will give a fuck about it. The reason why the US cares is because they know that it is likely going to degenerate into this scary world that they don't want it to be. Secondly, because it is that scary visioning that makes the house personal. Because the US knows that if it degenerates into a world war, they are likely going to have active arms to them. And that's why even though Ukraine is millions of miles away, they still care. And so they are funding and they are actively trying to prevent it. We say that's why the mobilization aspect of material speech is crucial, because we are then able to give people much more direct incentives to mobilize against dealing with some of these small harms that arise. Our world is way better. The third thing is that you now have much more justification to clamp down on smaller harms, and so states are much more legitimate to go extreme and mobilize massive amounts of resources to clamp down on it, because they now tell people, if we don't clamp down on it, they have the capacity to degenerate into the most extreme embodiment, like Hitler, like Voldemort. We think our extension wins, we win. And so, listen, the win here is the intensity of efforts that goes into dealing with medium scale and small scale harms is way much on our side. This means there is much more efficiency. This means there is much more preemptive prevention of most of these things. These guys will tell you, for that to happen, millions of people die. The way then is that given that less efforts going into the ubiquitous small scale harms that go on, much more millions of people die when that small scale harms receive less attention and exist for long periods of time, whilst our world sacrifices an instant to then create long-term change for the entirety of the world, which is way better.
We say, when you legitimize this form of evil, it means it stops happening just once, like you say, but happens more often. You need to defend that consistent evil you cause. That is
a technicality emotion. We support the existence, not the proliferation, not the frequency. And that's why I said, even if it is just once, that existence is enough to create all the impacts that we talk about. So we don't need to defend the frequency of it for it to manifest our impact. The only reason why you can't buy that POI is if our impact is tied to the frequency of it. So far as just once can happen and all our impacts can still exist, we win from closing government. Let me deal with opening opposition, because this extension outweighs all the things that Prosper talks to you about. Because he says extreme evil shadows less evil. We say that extreme evil gives us more incentive to deal with less evil. He says he is not your ordinary evil guy. First of all, material says it rarely happens. Secondly, society deal with such guys by killing them, annihilating them, and ending them totally. And so really don't think that. The only thing that I've not dealt with these guys that comes up in this debate, it says that high good, high evil, high evil, high good. That's not a debate. We say high evil, high incentive to take actions to solve and prevent small evils, because you can't predict the time that those small evils degenerate into extreme evils, and that's the comparative. So we don't have to defend high evil before high good happens. But secondly, there will still be mobilization or curb evil on their side. The comparative is the intensity with which that mobilization happens, and that's how we outweigh these guys. But finally, he says there is more antagonization towards that group. First of all, society recognizes that most of the time these guys are outliers. And that's why till today, people still are free with Germans. And German society have, even though Hitler existed as a German. And that's why, secondly, Voldemort didn't create hate for half-bloods in Hogwarts, because he was a half-blood and became all of that. The debate is simple. High evil incentive massively to prevent small evil, because you don't know when they degenerate proud samples.
The House now recognizes the opposition with people that have been a very engaging
Are you ready? In our attempt to fight against evil, which is something that is the end goal of the case of the entire government bench, we have constantly tried to create a categorical imperative, which is a maxim that suggests that an action is wrong and therefore it is wrong. What this means is that in this debate, we are looking at whether or not the particular kind of evil that Lord Voldemort presents is something that we should support. Understand that the supporting of this particular action makes it something that is capable, is possible to happen, or makes it something that people can do because it creates a justification or a room for people to do this in the future. At the end of the day, you don't actually achieve any good because the creation of that justification in itself alone means that you open the doors for the constant continuation of those harms, which is what he talks about. The difference between that and all those cases is that they talk about Lord Voldemort like kind of evil as though it is like all forms of evil. We point out the characterization of the specific nature of this evil. Two things in this debate, right? Responses and then finally clarity on what we need to go. One on responses. Team accountability loses this debate when they argue determinism. Let me explain. They argue that society causes you to become evil. We agree. Society can push you to the point of thinking of evil. However, the final decision, which is the free will, is something that you take upon yourself. So you have to take a knife, choose someone, and then cause the person's death. The reason why they have to subscribe to this particular argumentation is that without free will, there's no accountability. Then all the bad people that they say that Lord Voldemort should go after, or evil people should go after, we can't go after them because they also did not become evil because they wanted to become evil. Like, no accountability exists in the world where you preach determinism. And this is an important response that you don't get from Google. But most importantly, right, they say we just need discourse, panel. The discourse is being had to the point that the harm that's being caused can push someone to do bad. That same particular harm that is being caused is visible to the point where people can begin to see that there's an intervention that is necessary. And I'm going to engage the issue of intervention that CG argues, right? By the end of the day, right, panel, OG is largely out of this debate. So let me get into CG. Now, with CG, there are a couple of things that you need to understand, right? So CG argues that there's a spectrum, and the spectrum is small, medium, extreme. And you need extreme harm for bad things to be dealt with. Panel, he gives you an argumentation on the fact that we can perceive evil and fight against it. I am coming, Masharia. For instance, because we know we are human beings, there are scarce resources. States are constantly competing with themselves for power. These are things that are established, like a priori, like they already exist in the status quo. They are in the inherent nature of all things. That can then let you know that there's a possibility that in a world where the resources become scarce, there's going to be war, there's going to be conflict for the few resources that exist. So at the end of the day, you don't need people to take guns and start fighting for you to realize that, oh, there could be a war. That is ridiculous. But the biggest example that helps it is that perception brings mobilization. So much money is being spent on the space race, and nobody knows what is going to happen to us. The entire space race is based on speculation. There's speculation that there's a possibility for the human race to be wiped off by an asteroid or by some alien race. So perception is enough to create change. Perception is enough to get mobilization because the space race is speculation and it has gotten a lot of mobilization. Money is being spent, time is being spent. So the argument you get from Prosper in this debate is what wins the debate because they don't argue how there's a surety that there is going to be some sort of change at the end of the day. But we give you that because we explain to you how perception of evil exists inherently based on the fact that we can establish the fact that things are possible based on the things, stop it, based on the things that are already in existence. Selfishness, the scarce nature of resources, they already exist. You can tell that because water or oil is getting, there's a shortage of oil, there's going to be a point where people are going to fight over oil. So you can then create some sort of innovation around it. Their response is that, oh, stop it, I'll pick you, I'm coming. The point here is that, panel, they are saying that we need to wait. Let people die, not just one death, but millions of deaths in order to create that change. The problem here is the people that are going to die are equally going to also ask for change. and a redress of the bad and the harms that was done to them. So that is where the cycle of recycled revenge happens. Because your origin story is someone else's origin story. The fact that at the end of the day, you are killing, you are hurting people because you were hurt, gives another person the exact same mandate to equally go back and do the same thing. So your argumentation on how we need to see thousands of deaths, millions of deaths is very problematic, because all those million people that died have to be accounted for. And that is why after the war, a lot of countries have invested so much on military, in their military. They may not have used it yet, but the point is they are getting ready for war. That is not you creating change. You've not created any change in this world. Stop it. Moving on to another important thing, right? The mechanism that they create in this debate is ridiculous. The problem with the mechanism being ridiculous is that I've proven to you that change is possible without the mechanism. You don't need the death for the change to happen. The change can happen anyway. Now, the difference between us and OO. Panel. OO argues based on the characterization that there is a baseline for evil, and Lord Voldemort goes beyond that baseline. He's so evil, he's killing so many people. Understand that that's not the issue with this particular debate. The issue with this particular debate is the very nature of his evil deeds. He, as an individual, is not a revolutionary. That is why they are out. He's not trying to save a generation. He's not trying to save a group of people. He is self-seeking. He is self-funded. His evil is perpetual. It is never ending. It is about him getting what he wants. And that is it. And the reason why this characterization is important is because it makes you better understand what we are supporting. You can't have a debate where you are supporting something you don't understand. But most importantly, right, we give you an important characterization and explanation of the nature of the recycled revenge that is going to happen as a result of things that would happen if things like Lord Voldemort's evil is allowed. Small scale evil makes us already fear the big scale. Human beings can perceive that because somebody has stolen one loaf of bread, someone can steal 1 billion loaves of bread. That does not need, we don't need someone to steal thousands of loaves of bread for us to understand the fact that a loaf of bread can be stolen in very large quantities. At the end of this day, death is not necessary for evil to happen. Sorry, for good to happen. We don't need to create evil to create good. Good is inherent. Good in itself can be perpetuated. Thank you.